The moment the music stopped, I felt his hand slip something into mine. My sister's groom leaned close, his eyes sharp, and whispered so only I could hear, "Read this before she walks in." Then he walked away, leaving me frozen in the church pew with a folded note burning in my palm. My heart thudded as the guests whispered and shifted around me. The organist cleared her throat. Somewhere outside, my sister clutched her bouquet, seconds away from stepping inside. Why would her groom give me this letter now, at the very moment everything was supposed to begin? I slipped the paper under my clutch, hiding it from the watching eyes of my family. My father sat 2 rows ahead, his shoulders square, his pride practically radiating. He'd been waiting for this day since forever. My mother's smile looked plastered on, her hands clenched too tightly in her lap. And me? I felt like a trespasser at my own sister's wedding. That's how it had always been. Julia, the bride, was the golden one. Straight-A student, perfect daughter, father's favorite. And I was the reminder of everything imperfect in this family. The black sheep who never lived up to expectations. The one no one expected to play a major role in today's fairy tale. But now the groom had dragged me into it. Why me? The guests murmured louder. My aunt nudged me with a curious smile. I smiled back too quickly, terrified she could see the tremble in my hands. I excused myself and slipped out of the pew, pretending I needed the bathroom. Instead, I ducked into the side hallway, the note clutched like a lifeline. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was urgent, scrawled quickly like every second counted. "Before you let her walk down this aisle, you need to know the truth." I froze, my stomach twisted. The truth? About my sister? About him? About us? I pressed the paper flat against the wall, desperate for clarity, but the letters blurred through the haze of my panic. A truth so heavy it couldn't wait until after vows? A truth that needed me, of all people, to hold it? A door opened behind me and I nearly jumped. It was my cousin Emma, scrolling her phone, not even glancing up as she passed. I shoved the note into my clutch before she could notice. I leaned against the wall, my mind racing. My sister's groom wasn't reckless. He was calculated, deliberate. So whatever this was, it wasn't a prank, and it wasn't cold feet. It was something bigger. Outside the hallway, the first notes of the wedding march began to play. The doors would open any second now. My sister, radiant in white, would take her first step toward the altar, and in my hand, I held words that could shatter it all. I pulled the note out one more time, forcing myself to keep reading. The next line was short, jagged, and terrifying. "If you stay silent, everything your father built will collapse." My breath caught. My father? This wasn't about Julia. This was about him. And in that moment, I knew this wedding wasn't just about vows and rings. It was about secrets buried deep in our family. And for the first time, I wasn't the black sheep watching from the shadows. I was holding the detonator. I stuffed the letter back into my clutch, but the words echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. "If you stay silent, everything your father built will collapse." What did that even mean? My father wasn't perfect, but collapse? He was the man who built his law firm from scratch, the man who lorded his respectability over every neighbor, the man who never let a single hair fall out of place. He wasn't the type to gamble with secrets. Or was he? The wedding march thundered through the church doors, drowning my thoughts. Guests rose to their feet. My chest squeezed as I peeked through the crack in the door. My sister appeared, framed in sunlight, her veil trailing behind her like something out of a painting. She looked perfect, untouchable. And yet, I couldn't stop staring at the groom. His face was pale, too pale, his jaw tight, his eyes locked not on Julia, but on me. A silent message. Read it. Understand. Do something. My throat dried. I slipped back into the pew, my legs trembling beneath my dress. As my sister began her walk down the aisle, each step felt like a countdown. Tick, tick, tick. Memories assaulted me. Of all the times Julia and my father shared their secret smiles, of the whispers that always stopped when I entered the room. I used to think it was because I was the disappointment. But now, with this note, I wasn't so sure. I remembered last Christmas when Julia had disappeared with Dad into his study for over an hour. When I asked later, she brushed me off. "Just going over some family paperwork," she'd said, her voice too sharp. Family paperwork I was never included in. And now, as she walked toward her future, I wondered if that paperwork was the very thing this groom was warning me about. I couldn't sit still. As Julia neared the altar, I slipped the letter out again, shielding it with my clutch. The next line made my stomach lurch. "Ask him about the trust fund. Ask him who it was meant for." Trust fund? My head spun. My father never mentioned any trust, to me at least. But the way Julia beamed, the way my father puffed out his chest, the way my mother pretended not to notice, it all began to click. Was it possible my father had built everything for Julia and erased me from the picture entirely? The officiant's voice rang out. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" My father stepped forward, proud as ever. "I do." His voice boomed through the church. The congregation sighed with joy. My stomach churned with dread. Julia's eyes flicked toward me for the briefest second, and my breath caught. She knew. She knew. The flicker of recognition, the tightening of her jaw. This wasn't news to her. And suddenly, the weight of the groom's choice became clear. He hadn't given this letter to my mother, or to Julia's bridesmaids, or even to the officiant. He'd given it to me, the one person always left out, the one no one expected to matter. Because I was the only one who would see it for what it really was, a weapon. But why? Why risk detonating this secret now, in front of hundreds of guests, unless there was more? Unless the trust fund was only part of a larger lie? The ceremony droned on, words blurring together. My mind raced. My father clasped Julia's hand, beaming like a king passing on his crown. The groom's voice was steady, but his eyes never left me. I gripped the letter, rereading the last scribbled line I had missed before. My blood turned cold. "He's not marrying your sister to unite families. He's marrying her to take back what your father stole." My hand trembled. Stole? From whom? Julia's vows began, her voice strong and confident. The guests smiled, teary-eyed, but I couldn't hear her words anymore. I was drowning in the letter, in the realization that my father wasn't just hiding favoritism. He was hiding a theft, something massive, something powerful enough that the groom himself was staging this entire wedding as a reckoning. And me? I was holding the only piece of proof. I looked up, meeting the groom's eyes again. He gave the faintest nod, a signal. He was waiting for me, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't a wedding, it was a trap. My pulse hammered as the officiant turned to the groom. "And do you, James, take Julia?" "I do," he cut in firmly, but his eyes never left mine. That nod again, sharper this time. He was waiting for me to move, to act, to detonate everything with a single word. I clutched the letter so tightly it crumpled in my fist. My father stood between them, his chest puffed with pride. He had no idea the ground beneath him was about to give way. Or maybe he did, and had spent years making sure I'd be too weak, too voiceless to ever expose him. The officiant turned to Julia. "And do you, Julia, take James?" Her smile faltered, a tiny crack. My breath hitched. She hesitated for a beat too long before whispering, "I do." And then the silence after those words felt suffocating. Everyone smiled, clapped softly, dabbed tears. But I felt it. The tension, the weight of something dark pressing against the walls of the church. The vows ended. The officiant declared, "By the power vested in me." "Stop!" The word left my mouth before I even knew I'd spoken. The entire congregation turned, 100 heads swiveled in unison, eyes narrowing on me. The black sheep. My father's glare could have cut stone. "What are you doing?" he hissed through clenched teeth. I stood, shaking but rooted in place. My clutch slipped open, the letter dangling from my hand. I can't let this go on. Not until the truth is out. Gasps, murmurs. Julia's face drained of color. The groom, James, simply stood there, lips pressed into a hard line, waiting. My father strode toward me, his jaw tight. "Sit down, now." But my voice grew steadier as I read aloud. "He's not marrying your sister to unite families. He's marrying her to take back what your father stole." The silence that followed was deafening. My aunt covered her mouth. My mother slumped against the pew. Julia's bouquet slipped from her hands and scattered across the floor. My father's face twisted with fury. "Enough! Lies! Every word! Don't listen to this!" But James finally stepped forward, his voice cold and clear. "She's not lying. Your father knows exactly what I'm talking about." Every eye swung back to him. He pulled a folded document from his inner pocket and held it up. 30 years ago, your father stole control of a family trust. He funneled assets into his own name, erased rightful heirs, and buried the proof. My family's proof. And he thought we'd never come for it. The church erupted in whispers, scandal rippling through the rows. My father's face turned scarlet. "You don't know what you're talking about. I built this firm. This family's name." James's voice cut like a blade. "You built it on theft, and you know it." Julia stumbled back, her veil shaking. "Dad, is it true?" For the first time in my life, I saw my father falter. His eyes darted between me, Julia, and James. His fists clenched. He opened his mouth, but no denial came. Just silence. It was enough. The congregation gasped again, louder this time. The perfect mask of our family cracked right there at the altar. James turned to me. "You weren't supposed to be left out of that trust either. You were erased just like my family was. That's why I gave you the letter. Because you're the one person he can't silence anymore." My chest tightened. The years of being ignored, dismissed, made to feel small. It hadn't been an accident. My father had carved me out of the family legacy on purpose, rewriting the story so Julia stood alone as heir. The officiant's book slipped from his hands. I think we should pause." But it was too late. The damage was done. Julia tore off her veil, her voice breaking. "You used me, Dad. You lied to me." My father lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "Listen to me." James stepped between them, his voice steel. "No, you'll listen. Because from this day on, the truth is out, and everyone here knows what kind of man you really are." My father's face collapsed, his empire crumbling in the eyes of his own family, his colleagues, his friends. I stood taller, the letter still in my hand. For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, I was the one holding the truth. The ceremony dissolved into chaos, guests rushing to whisper, my mother sobbing quietly, Julia staring at James with shock and fury. But I felt strangely calm. Because this wasn't just James's reckoning. It was mine, too. As I walked down the aisle, past the broken bouquet and the stunned faces, I thought of all the times I'd been told to sit quietly, to stay in the shadows. Not anymore. This time, the last word was mine.